Welcome, everybody, to our extravaganza year-end and predictions and other random stuff episode of Greg Heym's Crossing the Line.
Off to such a good start that this is take two. This is perfect.
It's good to have Ray back, but his timing's a bit off, obviously.
A little rusty.
Even though he's off, it's still a lot better than what Shar did last week. So that's fine.
What did I do last week?
You didn't clap well. You couldn't clap under the table.
Under the table.
Yeah, what is that?
I wanted to make the sound, bro, as if it was
like
The
It's
understudy. The understudy is never as good as the original.
I'm the talent. I can't be also clapping.
Wait, you're the talent? I must have missed this. When did it become?
Easy, boy.
Wait, what does it say behind me? It still says Greg Heym, right? It doesn't say Shar Sedgh.
Enough talent for everybody.
Shar Sedgh, Esquire, Lone Daddy Scott Nadler. We're here to just ramble off some thoughts. And this will be the last show of the year.
The wrap-up show.
The wrap-up, outlook, forecast.
The good, the bad, the ugly.
What are we doing New Year's Eve? That kind of stuff. Going to see the Nikki and Greg experience at the Parkview Restaurant in Wantagh from 9 to 1 a.m.
Cross promotion. Look at that.
Amazing.
That's how you cross lines, buddy. You cross promote. See? You didn't
Wow,
think
he
we were...
was so proud of himself on that one. That was a good one.
No, you're
Couple
so jealous.
days under the weather. He's got time to think and process
Yes,
things.
I had right after we filmed last week, I had the stomach bug from hell. It was terrible, and everybody's getting it, and nobody should want it. It was terrible. I'm down 5 pounds, but I'm on the mend. Well, thank you. I'll do anything.
So I actually went back to
because the camera adds weight,
I went back to look at your shows at the end of last year to see what this extravaganza send-off podcast is.
You did some research, Shar?
You did more prep than I did.
First.
And there was a podcast like December 4th or 5th.
Okay.
And then there wasn't another one until January.
Because last year
you got sick.
I got very sick
in
last year.
December.
Yeah, I had a virus.
You did your research.
I did my research
for like a month, and I lost 25 pounds, which I've kept off.
Wow.
So
for all the doctors listening, can you write in to CTL at BHS USA and figure out why Greg gets sick in December?
That's right.
Well, a lot of people do.
That's true.
My son's been sick for a month with a cough. It's just a rough time of year, I guess.
Agreed.
And we had a bad snowstorm. Not bad, but much more snow than we thought.
So the suburbs were very different than the city. I went out to Long Island yesterday. It's gorgeous. They got a lot more snow.
And it was a heavy snow.
We came back to the city in the evening, and it was like it barely stuck here.
Yeah. No, that's the thing about the city. It disappears. It never happened.
Yeah. Are you a shoveler? Do you shovel?
Is he a shovel?
I call a guy.
All right. So no, what happened was I was at this fundraiser for Nikki's foundation. She has her sister's name on Saturday in Northport, which is like 40 minutes from me. Packed up my stuff, tried to start my car, wouldn't start. So
The Tesla?
no, this was the Ford because I had a lot of equipment,
Okay.
a couple of guitars and stuff like that, and people in the car. So we couldn't get it jumped initially, but then somebody had this little jump starter thing, like a little tube, and got me started. So at 7 a.m. yesterday on Sunday, I had to call AAA. They do a battery replacement. They just come, take the old one out, put the new one in. Yeah, reasonably priced. I've done it before. In fact, the old battery was a AAA battery that was like 5 years old, so it all worked out nice. And I didn't have any gas for my snowblower, so I had to shovel so they would get there. So then after I got the car fixed, then I went, and I'm a snowblower guy. But you know what stinks about it? And, I love my neighbors. Then you start doing your neighbors. Oh. And next thing you know, you're outside much longer than you would have been if you just taken a shovel and done your own. Even when my son was home, it's like, come on, Greg, we got a shovel. He's like, I'll be right out. He's not coming out because at 18, I wasn't coming out either.
At 18, I was shoveling my parents, for sure. And yesterday when we got to Great Neck, shout out to my brother-in-law, I saw him across the street shoveling a Holocaust survivor's driveway.
Wow.
And my kid was sleeping in the car, so I said to my wife, why don't you guys just sit here for a few minutes? I went out, helped him finish that off, and then we went back inside.
Well, I had this neighbor across the street. He would get mad if I would snow blow his walk because I try to get out to do it so he wouldn't have to. And then there was a woman on the other side of the street who called herself a pioneer woman. Like if she had her groceries and you'd see like she's going to tip over, be like, oh, let me help you. She's like, no, get away from me. And one time she was trying to shovel her steps by holding the rail with one hand and poking at it with a shovel. I said, please let me do that. And she's like, no. And I was like.
They could do a much better job here in the city. I found that in the last couple of years, it's not as.
What did your fancy shoes get wet? What happened?
No, my shoes are fine. I would just say that the sidewalks used to be a lot more shoveled.
I think those are the property owner's responsibility, not the city for the most part.
Well, people aren't doing it.
Well, I think the lawyer would know. We used to do meetings in Rockefeller Center, and one in January, annual meetings, and one time there was like a blizzard. And you go there, I didn't realize they do this. They actually truck the snow out. These big...
Really?
Yeah, these trucks come, and they just put the snow in, and it's gone. Like, you wouldn't even know it snowed.
I know. I thought the Department of Sanitation comes, puts them right by the drains, and like waters them down. So
I feel like they're just salting the sidewalk, and then they're done.
The side roads for sure.
That's it. Yeah.
All right. Well, we will get to our a quick review of the Fed and what happened last week, but then we're going to get into the fun stuff right after these commercial messages.
Go Knicks.
Go Knicks. We're hoping the Knicks are going to take that cup. Hopefully.
Let's go.
We'll have a couple of weeks to prepare ourselves to get over it before we do the next show. But coming to you, as always, from Studio 1873, decorated by our buds at the Everset.
Do you have a big move coming up? I'm Scott Nadler with CrossCountry Mortgage, and I've got the loan to match your dream home. Whether it's your first or your fifth, I'll make the process quick and easy. Call me today. Let's make it happen.
Sedgh and Zuckerman is a boutique residential law firm guiding you and your clients every step of the way with a solution-oriented approach. Make sure to work with a deal maker and not a deal breaker. Contact us today at sznylaw.com.
Hi, I'm Evan Greenberg with Langdon Title. I specialize in title insurance across New York, helping real estate attorneys, agents, and brokers close with confidence. I solve problems fast and keep your deals moving. Contact me anytime.
All right, so the Fed cut rates, not a surprise. Some people are thinking maybe it wouldn't happen, but if you watch this show, you know we predicted it. Us in the markets who had about a 90% chance.
Us and everybody
but
else.
We can still take credit for that stuff. 3 dissents, 2 who didn't want to cut, and 1 that wanted a bigger cut. You can guess who appointed that person. And now they're gonna inject some liquidity into the markets. I think $40 billion to start or something like that. One of the things that was lost in this that I pointed out on my blog was they had their economic projections, which had their dot plot. So we know we're expecting 1 cut in 26 and maybe 1 in 27. That means nothing concrete with that, but probably cut early next year. But they also raised their forecast for economic growth and lowered their inflation forecast. So those are good things, Scott Nadler.
It is, and you start to think maybe Powell got a look into the jobs report that's coming out this week and the CPI numbers. Maybe they saw it.
He's not supposed to.
They're not supposed to, but it seems like maybe he got wind of it because what we talk about all the time is people focus heavily on the cut itself. But what's really important is the comments. What Powell actually says in the press conference. And his tone changed completely, right, Greg? I mean, he's been...
Well, that also might have been the ADP data that's been coming out the last several weeks.
Very true, yeah.
That has made it clear. I think that it's... Or maybe he's just at this point like, I know I'm out next year, so what do I care? Yeah, here's what you want. Here's your Christmas gift. Now leave me alone.
Yeah, but just to be clear, inflation somewhat stable.
Yeah,
he's focusing on the labor market, which for months and months and months, that hasn't been so clear cut. Now, you mentioned the dissenters. It's fascinating. You see someone like Austin Goolsbee. We're going to talk about predictions. Goolsbee, in the beginning of this year, predicted 7 rate cuts, okay? And then he dissented already twice. So he was only looking at 1 rate cut. So some of these predictions are really hard to, our predictions are, you could ask anybody. You could write it in stone.
You could ask anybody anything. We talked about this last week, and it's soft data. It's like consumer sentiment or anything else. You could change your mind tomorrow.
Right, but to go from one extreme to another, where the data is in the favor of cuts,
right,
doesn't add up. Something seems off. They're all looking at the same data, and you're interpreting it in a completely different way. I don't know. It was just odd, but I think by and large, we're in this interest rate cutting / pausing cycle. which is good. And I think the market's starting to feel that. And you think like when we talk to consumers, people who are looking in the market and buying homes, we've dealt with for the last 2 years so much volatility, where there were times where you're waking up, you have no clue if the rates are going to be up a quarter, down a quarter, you have no clue. And now finally there's some stability in the market, which is what a consumer needs to make a decision for them and their families.
That's what markets like, Shar Sedgh. See, I said it without messing it up.
Amazing.
So they want certainty, they want calmness, just like you attorneys, you know. But you ever look at, you go to these websites and they show you what changed in the Fed statement, and you realize they just do these with Mad Libs. You know, the economy has blank since our last meeting. It's like, all right, moderated. That's usually what they put at some point, right? So what do you take away from all this?
So when you say that you put in a lot of emphasis on the comments, not so much on the decision, I feel like the last 3 meetings, he sort of said the same thing. Here's your rate cut. Don't expect it for sure to happen again. And then as we get closer to the next meeting, it's clear that another rate cut is going to happen.
That's like when I send my son money at college and like, make this last because I'm not going to send it, you know, for another couple of weeks. And then he's like, but Dad, I got this Bills tickets field level. And it's like.
For me, it felt more clear, where I think in the past we're still data dependent, we're still waiting on this, we're waiting on that, whereas now our focus is on the weakness in the labor market. Right. We want to put our focus on that, and that's why we're going to cut, and we'll see where things go from there. Right. Whereas, you know, he's kind of talking out of both sides of his mouth previously, where it's, hey,
well, isn't that the lawyer in him?
I didn't say it.
I did. It's my show. I said it. Do you think having an attorney in there does change the way he does these press conferences a little bit?
You knew we were going to get here.
You can't put me in a position to defend him because
I'm just
that.
asking a question here.
But I do think, so I always say when people go to law school, you don't necessarily learn what the law is. When you come out of school, you don't know anything. You just learn how to acquire information. You think how to analyze, how to use reason. And I think that's why lawyers can be found in all these different industries at the leading those industries. So just because you don't like the way he talks, there is a plan of attack of which he's doing it. And sometimes a little bit of stability is what he needs to do and keep you on your feet.
What's wrong with a little bit of comedy? That puts people at ease? But that's my shtick.
Some people might say he is a joke, but...
Well, Shar said that, okay, just for the record.
Some people said that.
Well, and remember, for you out there thinking of buying a home, calling Scott up for a mortgage, this doesn't directly correlate to mortgage rates. We say this all the time. We've seen the inverse happen. As the Fed's cutting rates, people might worry about inflation a little bit. But mortgage rates have been kind of stable too, haven't
To your
they?
point on that, so there were the previous 3 cuts. So there were 6 cuts. The previous 3, last time the 3 cuts prior to the next 3, rates went up. And these most recent 3 cuts, rates have stabilized. So, but by and large, you start the year off, you know, where rates are close to 7%. Now they're close to 6%. It's a big change.
Right.
It's a really big change. So for every $100,000 that someone borrows, you know, it's like a $70 change. Makes a big difference.
All right. So now that we've talked about that, I'm going to ask some questions about this year. Just give me answers. Good one, Shar. Not like lawyer answers.
I like the
Knicks
will
win the championship.
I like the look in your eye.
The Knicks. Well, let's start with the NBA Cup, and then we can take it from there. But will we get Giannis? It's not looking possible now.
Not looking great.
Because he's out for like a month now anyway.
Those picks we gave up, Mikal Bridges.
Especially if we win the Cup, we got a lot of momentum. You know, you don't want to turn into a Luka situation.
Okay.
But we digress.
We digress. All right. So I'll start with you, Scott Nadler. What is, in your mind, the biggest economic surprise of this year? What kind of threw you for the biggest loop saying, wow, I didn't see that coming?
I don't know if it's a surprise, but it's still surprising how coming off of 2024, the revisions and the modeling that they use to get the data that we have, we just spent a year where 2024, they overestimate job growth by almost 900,000 jobs, whatever it was, 860,000
No, it was
jobs.
912, I think.
912,000 jobs. And then this year we see a lot of the same coming.
Remember, that number is going to be revised next year, so it could be bigger or smaller.
Correct. So, you know, this data is so important. I mean, trillions of dollars are being moved and decisions are being made based on the data that comes out. And now we come into this year, and a lot of the same happens. So I think that's one thing. And then if that's 1A, then 1B is the dissenters in the Fed. That disconnect in the Fed itself, that's something we haven't seen in a long time.
Right.
And
well, we haven't seen this level of where the dual mandate has really come into play at a level, especially how it all snuck up on us.
Right.
It seemed because of the data issues that we had. Right.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah. So I think those two things together. With all that being said, you would think there would be a lot more volatility in the market. And the market, for the most part, I guess this is probably the surprising part, it's been relatively stable to trending in our favor.
And it's not going to be the last 2 years. We saw the S&P up over 20%. It's not going to be up that much this year unless something really crazy happens the last 2 weeks. But what about mortgage rates? You say you look at where they are now and you go, yeah, that's kind of what I expected. Not. You know, at least it didn't shoot up again.
It's so hard to predict where rates are going to go. You know, and clients ask us this question all the time. They say, I know you don't have a crystal ball. I know you can't predict it, but what do you think? Right. And a lot of us internally, you know, we consult with a lot of economists on our side. Obviously, we talk to you a lot. And the forecast early in the year was that rates would come down somewhere in the low sixes. And that's exactly where
because they had gone down going into the beginning of the year.
Correct.
And then they went right back up.
Right. They went right back up.
They've been saying that for almost 2 years now. Everybody buying a house is saying, well, I'm going to
eventually
refi the next
we're
one.
all going to be right at some point.
Exactly.
Right. But speaking about 2025 only, Shar, a lot of the people that we consulted with were right, you know, and we were advising clients about that. Now, this happens a lot where if we're expecting rates to and we're not going into 2026 yet, we'll go into it, but let's say we predict that rates are going to be lower again in 2026. The conversation becomes, well, then why don't I just wait? Right? Why don't I, if
and we've given the
if I'm
answer
a home
to
buyer,
that.
there is a cost to waiting. So I actually ran an analysis recently. You buy a home at right now for $1 million, put 20% down, you take a rate of 6.25%, right? That same person says, I'm going to wait for rates to drop to mid fives. Let's say you do that. A lot of other people are also going to wait for rates to drop to 5.5%. So that home that you were looking at that was valued at $1 million is now worth $1.1 million.
That's right.
So your payment at 5.5% is now $70 more than it was if you bought the home at 6.25%. So there is a cost to waiting, and I think even this year, there are many people that missed out because they were because
right.
of all this talk. People were expecting in January, well, you tell me rates are going to be lower, then let's just wait. And a lot of people did wait.
You've talked about this too, but NAR always points out if every 1% mortgage rates go down, 5.5 million people now can enter the buyer
Yeah,
pool.
NAR listens to the podcast, so that is where they got it from.
At NAR. But yes. That's your other problem. We've said this before. You could face higher prices as inventory starts to get absorbed while you're waiting and everybody else is buying.
Right.
All right, we'll give you your chance now, Shar Sedgh, Esquire. What was your big economic event this year?
So I think the biggest lesson my clients learned, and sort of I guess I did also, is that they've sort of gotten past the idea that rates are going to drop down to where they used to be, right? So going into 2025, you still saw people who had recently bought their homes at 2.5, 3, 3.25, and they were somehow grasping at a reality where that would come back. And I think that's completely been extinguished.
See, if they'd watched the show, they would have known this because something that has never happened before, except for that one moment in time, is not very likely to happen again.
Exactly. So you have all these new people who are now saying, okay, you know, I'm in the market to buy a place where our rates, you know, they haven't really seen, they weren't looking at places, you know, 2 years ago where they saw those low rates. And now you're coming back into the market and all of a sudden they're at 6-7%. So I think there's sort of a new reality that people are grasping with and saying, okay, this is where we're going to be. Let's see if we can make this work or not. And I think you're right. A lot of people are coming in before these prices go up because their payments will be much lower as they get.
Buy when no one else is buying. That's how you get it.
Time in the market, not timing the market.
All right, so I have a couple
What famous movie quoted that? Do
Which
you remember? Rodney Dangerfield, you said.
Oh, yeah. Everybody's selling buy, everybody's buying sell. Yeah, back to school. That's a great movie. That is a great movie
That is a fantastic movie.
with two terrible actors in
is
it.
rising.
And I don't mean Dangerfield, but all right. So here are
Sam
the
Kinison stole that movie.
here are the Greg Heym stories of
Go
the year.
ahead.
Scott touched on one of them. I mean, the not only the fact that we were overcounting jobs, and Powell said this in his post conference, where he's like, we may be overestimating job growth by 50,000 jobs a month. So do the math, and
Which
you
brings
see
it to zero, right? Or we're losing jobs.
yeah,
Negative.
basically it's and look, that's what ADP has told us about the second half of the year. It's flat, and we'll see when we get the November jobs report what it says. Remember, the delayed September jobs report surprised us all. Like it couldn't have been this high. So that's
And it didn't even matter that much.
that's like so. There's two parts to the labor market thing. Like that problem, we don't even know how to count this accurately. And then the other part is how suddenly it seemed to come out of nowhere. Like jobs were humming along. It was like, cool. Then we got like the shot across the bow, which was the benchmark revisions. It's like, like what does this mean? And then all of a sudden we started to see things turn negative.
That was in July, right?
Right. And then we have no data, which leads to the second big story of the year, which is, the government shutdown. Longest ever. Leaves us without data, leaves the Fed at a meeting without data, which is not good because even when they have data, they don't always do the right thing. So that's part of it. I think you have to throw in the AI revolution and what that has done to stocks. Particularly all anybody seems to care about is NVIDIA and where that is at any given moment. But another story, and
What's the surprise for you, though?
this wasn't a surprise. It was a surprise for a lot of other people, and there's actually a piece in the Wall Street Journal about this today. But I was 100% right on this. I said this 8 million times on this show.
Timestamp it, Ray.
Tariffs do not cause widespread inflation. And guess what? Now everybody is starting to admit, except people that are just completely partisan or politically motivated, that the whole idea of these tariffs, it was going to wreck the economy, cause recession, pay $3,000 for an iPhone, all a load of bunk, as they used to say in the day, because these people didn't take simple economics classes. There's a guy named Milton Friedman who wrote the book, and actually several books, on monetary policy. Read them, because you people clearly do not know what you're talking about. My viewers know, and my listeners know, because they hear and they go find out for themselves. But the only way you have runaway inflation is if you print money, right? Isn't that how we had the highest inflation in 40 years, just 3 years ago? And we're still trying to get it down to where we want. The fact that people fell for this because of their own leanings, let's just say have a nice term, is ridiculous. There's no academic research that backs up anything that people said about this. And I get mad because so many emails I got and so many nasty comments that I was the one being partisan and I was the one not going by the facts. If the money supply doesn't change, if Greg has the same amount of money to spend, Greg can only buy the same dollar amount of stuff. So if I have to spend more on cups, I'm buying fewer bobbleheads. It's as simple. Anybody who does a budget knows this. So it wasn't a surprise to me because I did my homework on this, and all you had to do is really think about it. And we talked about this for months. And now even you see publications that are changing their minds about this. And the Wall Street Journal has a scorecard of what was promised and what happened. It's very interesting. I suggest, if you can, read the article because it has the charts and graphs to really, nobody's right about 100% of things 100% of time. But when you keep trying to push a narrative with no evidence to back it up and it doesn't make sense to the average person, there's going to come a point where it's going to be debunked. And I think that's what's happened by now. I don't know how anybody could really say now, well, no, it just hasn't hit yet.
You make a great point. The economic fundamentals almost don't matter because we're in this media environment right now.
We're in a TikTok world, Lena.
Environment.
The headlines,
where,
all that people care
but
about.
Do we think, I mean, this you could think about this in many different areas, but let's talk about economics specifically because it's...
That comes in handy since this is an economics podcast. Go ahead.
Agreed. Do we think things get worse before they get better?
Well, here's the problem.
Going into an election year,
There's always something.
but you can frame an argument to fit your pre-existing view and opinion
Well, we see that
on
all the
virtually
time.
anything.
Yeah,
It's just these types of things do have real impact on people, and they do move markets.
They do. And, we see certain people make promises. We just had a very well-documented political contest here in New York City. And, people, that's why you have not just social media, you have resources to do your own study. And I think it's important for voters these days to try to do a little bit more homework, because the issues aren't as cut and dry, for sure.
No one has time for that.
And, they do. They just need to scroll, cut an hour scrolling out of your day, and you'll have plenty of time.
Or look for the right things, and the algorithm start feeding you the information you want to see. But
Like all those guitars I look at all day.
The goal of the tariffs, though, were twofold, right? So the first was to raise revenue. And then, when we started to see how much money was actually going to be generated from this, we heard about paying down the national debt. And then recently we heard these reports about everyone getting $2,000 back. And whether you think which one is right or wrong, there does seem to be some revenue that's tangible.
Well, and remember, we're still waiting for the Supreme Court to weigh in on this. So there's still a lot to this, and both sides are always confident they're going to win, whatever.
The second part of it, though, was to sort of bring domestic manufacturing up. And that's something that I haven't seen anybody talk about. Everyone's just sort of saying, how are we going to deal with these tariffs? Are we going to pass a cost on it? Are we going to eat it? But I would love to see this year if any of this manufacturing can be brought in-house or nationally, and see if there can be some incentives for people to do that.
And that is the whole purpose. And we know that certain things are not going to be made here because it would be just too cost prohibitive. But it's something I think you can't, the jury's got to wait a bit on this, because it's not going to happen overnight. It's like, okay, plant here, plant there. So we'll see what happens. I think that it's also, you want to protect jobs here, right? Like you said, and try to create more jobs. And obviously with the data that's come out, that's become a little more of a priority. So what we're going to do now is take a break. So we have a couple more commercials. And then we're going to give our outlook for 2026. And we'll be back in a few moments.
Looking to stage a property but on a tight budget and timeline? Stage with Stage and Fold. Stylish, lightweight, foldable, 3D printed cardboard furniture that looks real. Quick delivery and easy assembly. Staging starts at just $199 a month per room, and setup takes less than 30 minutes. Contact us today to stage smarter, sell faster, save thousands with Stage and Fold.
All right, now it's all time for all of us to take out our crystal ball or our bobbleheads, look into Ron Guidry's mustache, and figure out what's going to happen in 2026.
You rub my 8 ball.
Rub Shar's head, freshly shaven, nice. And let's hear our predictions for the economy, housing, whatever you want to nix, whatever you want to talk about. We'll start with Shar this time.
Let's go. All right,
So I'm not showing favorites.
A lot of what we've talked about, the Fed, is really on a national level. And I feel like sometimes you need to carve out our market from this, because a lot of that may not be the reality of what our clients are dealing with, right? So in the city, nationally we see people are rate sensitive, but in the city I feel like they're a little bit less sensitive than that. We have the high-end market, which has been really busy for us this year. And as the market sort of, like I said before, sort of like embraces this new reality of rates being 6 or higher, I think the market here is still gonna do well. That's my prediction about the market.
All right.
Here.
Any economic predictions?
No, I'll leave that.
All
to
right,
the experts.
leave it to the money
Leave
guy.
that to the experts.
I
What do
would
you
say
got, Lone Daddy?
2 things locally to piggyback off of what Shar just said. Number one, the bane of existence in the mortgage business today, nationally, but more specifically here, is getting buildings approved for financing. And I predict that next year, regulations are going to scale back a little bit, where it's going to make things a little bit easier because there was a big overkill. Now, when something like the Surfside building in Miami collapses, that's going to shake the industry in a massive way to make sure that something like this can never happen again and regulations go into play, which they should. But there's a limit. And I think here in New York, we're dealing with co-ops and condos, we're surrounded by them. And just because someone has great finances and they can get approved for a loan, for any loan, doesn't mean they can close because the building might be dealing with issues. So I think we're already starting to see it a little bit. I think from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's perspective, things will scale back a little bit to make things easier for home buyers. A little bit. That's going to help.
Okay.
From an interest rate perspective, I would think by Q2, Q3 of next year, we'll see an average 30-year fixed at about 5.625%.
Wow, he had a number ready to go. He does think about all this.
Yeah, which I think will be, look, rates are never low enough, right? During COVID, I remember I was working with a buyer. We were 2 weeks away from closing. We had a 15-year fixed at 2.25%. Okay, we're 2 weeks away. He texts me a flyer that says 15-year fixed at 1.99%. It ended up being false, but it's never low enough. But I do think from where they are now, I think Q2, Q3 of next year, we'll see them at around 5.625%.
Okay.
Number two. And the third thing I'll say is, and this kind of piggybacks off of that NAR report that we talked about a couple weeks ago, that they see an uptick of home sales of
14%, I think it was.
14%. So we've been pretty flat for the last 3 years of 4 million homes sold nationally. We talked about this. 14% represents 560,000 additional homes being sold. So you put all these things together, being in real estate right now, I think 2026 is kind of geared up and teed up for us to be a really strong year.
Okay. Well, as far as the economy goes, you're going to hear a lot more of the R word. You're going to hear people talking about recession, especially if the government data echoes what ADP.
By the way, a word that we do hear pretty much every year also.
Well, no, I think you're going to hear a lot more of it.
I agree.
Remember, one thing I forgot to mention when I was talking about the surprises of 25 has been the resilience of the American consumer to keep spending. Mm-hmm. Now, we didn't get a third quarter GDP report yet. We will at some point. But, there's going to be more worry about that. Although wage increases are continuing to outpace inflation by almost 1.5%. So that's how consumers keep spending, which keeps GDP positive. But I think people are going to worry more and more as job loss. If it continues to go in the wrong direction, employment, then I think you're going to hear a lot of people more worried about their job, which makes them spend less, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The fact that we've managed to avoid recession, people go, well, we had a soft landing. No, we haven't landed yet. Inflation didn't hit 2%. So there hasn't been
Powell did insinuate that inflation is lower than the reports that we're getting, correct?
Well, the problem is the way it's measured. We've talked about housing in particular. It's the biggest part of the increase each month when you read the BLS's CPI report. Yeah. So, and it's slow to come down. Quick to go up, it seems, prices.
It's like rates.
It's like rates.
Is 2% an attainable number? Is that real?
Yeah, we had it for years. And then we decided to print, all that money during COVID, which, again, we were told inflation was going to be transitory. But again, they didn't read Milton Friedman, so they didn't realize that once the money's in the economy, it's not so easy to get out of the economy. Right. And they said, well, in the financial crisis, we gave all that money to banks. Big difference between giving it to someone and saying lend it to people, but paying them interest on it, so they have an incentive not to lend it because they get a guaranteed profit from doing that, to actually sending people checks and giving them cash to spend. You can argue whether or not you needed that. Obviously, if you're going to lock the country down, then you have to, support the people that can't work and can't make money. But we overdid it. And then that clearly, without a way, you can't just flick the switch and say...
Yeah, but Greg, it was the Inflation Reduction Act. What are you talking about?
Yes, well, we won't get into that. But it's funny, we hear about that and inflation rebates and all this other stuff. It's like, that's what caused the problem in the first place when you send people money. So I think you're going to hear more people worried about a recession. That'll be good for mortgage rates. I'm not going to even try to guess where they're going to be. I mean, if we can get them to get, once they get below 6, which they're pretty close now, I think that alone will set off the starting gates, and I think people will fly out. Because we talked about this a lot over the last year, that people think 5.5% is a normal mortgage rate, which is even it's about 2%, almost 2.5% below what the average rate has been over the last half century. So again, we've been spoiled by low rates. So I think we'll see that. Who knows what's going to happen with the stock market? Midterm political contests, gubernatorial contests, all of that stuff is going to create uncertainty, but there's uncertainty every year. I discount that. People get past that, particularly the stock market gets past it like that. And remember, stock market, even if it doesn't match what it did in 24 and 23, it's still a really good year. A lot of people are expecting record bonuses. So I don't think we're going to see a recession next year. I think the consumer still has enough money. I think that we will see employment start to contract a little at a faster pace. Let's put it that way. Right now, it's no hire, no fire.
Yeah.
Layoffs are still very, very low. They went from dipping under 200,000 to rising sharply, but it's weekly data. Smooth it out over, you're still under 250,000 layoffs a week. That's pretty amazing, given all the announcements, and that's what we talked about last week. Like, they make an announcement, doesn't mean they lay all those people off. Doesn't mean we know the timing. Doesn't mean they don't hire in other parts of the company. So I think we're going to keep hearing about doom and gloom that could be coming. It also might be used for other purposes, if you catch my drift, with contests happening. That's just always the nature of the beast. But I think the Fed doesn't seem worried about 26. They're not predicting a recession. But it's funny because nobody ever predicts a recession ever. Like, when something really bad happens, they're quick to say, oh, this is going to... But when people, whether it's budget offices or the Fed or companies, they never say, oh, you go on TV and go, we're predicting a recession for 26, because people would hate you.
They will predict, if this is done, if this policy is enacted, if you put tariffs on this country, if you do this, if you do that, then we're probably going to see a recession. But you're right. But my prediction of 5.625 for mortgage rates is not random. That spread between the 10-year Treasury and the 30-year fix historically is around 200 basis points. Last couple of years, it's been about 250 basis points. So that spread is now coming a lot closer. So if you look at a 200, it's not, I don't think it's...
So for those of you who may not know, 200 basis points is 2%.
2%. So I think if you see a 10-year Treasury at 3.5, 3.6, 200, 2% above that is where you would see a mortgage rate.
Well, a lot of this increasing premium, the reason the spread is wide, and a lot of that's been blamed on regulations, fees, and what happened with the regional banking crisis. Is that how you see it too?
Absolutely.
Because you remember we had this in 24 where a couple of regional banks collapsed.
Yep.
And it really shocked this area because they were really intricate in the housing market.
Absolutely.
Too. But so I think that things are going to be not exciting, which is okay, but everybody's going to be labor focused on the jobs market because, that's the thing that kept us out of the recession that we thought we were due for. And with inflation peaking at a little over 9% just a couple of years ago, if we'd have said we would still be positive, I think people are like, there's no way. Like, you have to have a recession at some point. Again, that soft landing was never achieved. People say it all the time to me, we had the soft landing. No, we did not.
So I have a question for you. Let's say the government created a new little entity called DOGE, but spelled DOEG, the Department of Economic Growth.
I thought you say Greg.
That would have been a good department.
And let's say you were the head of that department, okay?
Yes.
So, which basically means for the first 3 months of next year, you have access to the top of the administration, and you get to say, hey, this is what I think we should do, right?
Will they listen to me, though?
You get to whisper in their ears.
Okay.
What things would you say over the next 60 to 90 days for us to sort of turn that outlook that you made for not bad to great?
Well, I don't think there's much you can do because when you have companies, you can't tell the private sector, okay, I start hiring people. Because that's the first thing. It's like,
Right.
we got to turn this jobs thing around.
But what policies would you put in place to turn that
Well,
around?
there's the old-fashioned ones that people look at. Can we do something with taxes? Can we offer incentives for companies to hire? You know, for years in New York City, they had benefits. One of them was REAP, where you try to get companies to bring people in here and you give them tax credits. But that doesn't seem to be the way people want to do it anymore. So you try to create as friendly an environment as you can. And administrations always do this. They meet with business leaders and they say, what do you need from us? Do they always listen? Sometimes they can't do much about it. You know, they have to represent everybody. And there's always a rub. You know, there's always, you can't have the perfect plan that doesn't upset somebody because it may be a problem. And so I think you want to look at your taxes, your regulatory processes, all that stuff, the same thing people are always talking about, and say, are we competitive? Because that's the best we can do. You know, we're not going to promise anybody we'll have the lowest taxes, we'll have the fewest regulations. You know, you look at AI now we're going to have like a national platform and rules for AI. There's so much uncertainty built into it, and you want to encourage entrepreneurship for sure. You think of what companies like Microsoft and Apple and Google and Amazon have meant to the economy. So I can't say, unless you're going to make me, you know, omnipotent, where I could just say, this is a tax rate, this is that, this is, you know, thank you, Ray. It's like if I ask you, how are we going to reform the legal system, to help with all these lawsuits that go on? You know, you're going to have some ideas, but it's not so quick.
Right.
And when you think of all the people that have to agree to get anything done,
the bureaucracy is the worst.
That's what. So we'll try to be happy and say, you know, I think we have a good track record of allowing great companies to grow and prosper. There's an incentive to start your own company and to do well. You can become, you know, the next Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or whatever. And I think offering that opportunity is what makes this country great.
Right.
And, you know, as an economist, I think we should get more serious about the Fed and what it does. Because having a dual mandate is bad enough. They've been pushing other mandates on the Fed too.
Yes.
And it's going to be a point where they won't be able to do anything. Because their two mandates now are in direct conflict with each other. Not just at this moment, but usually in general.
Right.
Because if you're maximizing employment, inflation's going to go up. Mm-hmm. If inflation is going up, employment's going to go down. Like they're always going to move in the opposite directions. So that's my economist answer.
Okay.
One thing we haven't talked about yet is Powell, because as we know,
Well,
Jerome
we
Powell,
do know the next chairman will be named Kevin.
Yes.
Because the two finalists are both Kevin.
Yes.
I think it's Hassett, if I had to bet. But it could go either way. I think they're probably pretty much expected to be similar.
They're both doves.
Right. So
they both
doves are
want
people that aren't as worried about inflation. Hawks are people that are. So
that
if you
are
hear that
aggressively fighting inflation. Those are hawks.
Wall
Doves
Street has
are-
bulls and bears. The Fed has hawks and doves. Not as scary as bulls and bears, right, Lena?
Exactly.
All right, wait. We didn't ask Lena and Ray for any predictions. Anything you want to say?
Wait, does Lena have a wedding this year?
This coming year, yes.
2026.
2026. That's a huge.
I predict Lena is going to wear white. That's my...
I predict we're going to do a podcast from Italy. Is that what we're going to?
Yeah, live stream.
Well, you forgot something. We were not invited to the wedding, and rightfully so, probably.
Will she say yes? I think that's probably
I think when it comes
the
to
biggest question.
destination weddings, if someone's willing to travel, they're invited.
Well, just remember,
I think that's the rule.
I am half Italian and Sicilian, so, you know, just for the food.
Nice.
Now,
I'll add you guys to the list.
now, what are you serving at the wedding? Have we determined this yet? No?
What are we what?
Have you finalized the menu at the wedding yet?
I'm doing that this weekend.
Woo! No. Yes. Mm-hmm. While some of us would be slaving away on annual and quarterly reports, Lena would be jet setting off to Italy to taste food.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Greg and Nikki not performing at the
We have not got a call yet.
They couldn't get them.
Did you
not?
They were booked.
The cocktail hour. And don't forget, it's not too late to get your tickets for New Year's Eve at the Parkview in Wantagh, where the Nikki and Greg experience will be playing from 9 to 1 in the morning, if Greg can stay awake that long. Which
mention the podcast and he'll buy you an appetizer.
Well, if you're in
a
there,
glass of wine.
everything's included. So yes, have whatever you want. So all right, one last thing. It's the time of year. What are we all thankful for? Can you do that, Ray? You don't have to say this podcast. If you don't, I'm gonna be mad. But you don't have to say it. Do you have something you want to say? Thankful for? Okay,
So many things. So many things.
Ray's speechless today.
Lena, you want to be grateful for anything?
He's very cool shoes on though.
Does he?
Riz.
I will say.
No, family and friends, and you guys, and the More Network.
Yeah.
Oh, geez, someone's kissing up. And not to me. That's which one's your favorite podcast, Lena?
This one, of course.
Make sure
Of
Vince
course.
Rocco gets a copy of this. Happy holidays, Vince. Scott, you got any closing thoughts on the year? And
I do. I will say the
you
whole
want to
team
thank the
here.
Academy or
I will
agent?
of course. No, this is always a lot of fun every week. You guys are fantastic, Ray and Lena, Greg. We talk about this all the time. You are such a fantastic host. You make things a lot easier for us. You're like a true point guard when it comes to this. You set us up very well. So
I had
it's-
handles
it's,
back in
there you
grade
go.
school.
There you go. I will also say more broadly, like the real estate agent community, I could speak for Shar also, like we're both very, very thankful for them. I think real estate agents, for a bit, we're under attack. You know, their commissions, you have these reality TV shows that
Make it
paint
look
them
like you
in a
spent
certain
5
way,
minutes,
and you know, like they don't, like these people work so hard. And they don't just chase a paycheck. They're really looking to help people get into a home to start their families or help their families or downsize or upsize. And there's no me without them. So very, very grateful and thankful for the whole real estate agent community.
That was very nice. To top that, tough guy. Let's go.
I can. So we've actually signed on to extend this going into 2026. The #1 podcast at Brown Harris.
Now I told you where to leave the sack of cash.
The More
right?
Network.
Make sure it has the obligatory $sign on it.
So we're excited with that, and of course, you're really wonderful at taking these complex ideas and simplifying them for. I'm an average person when it comes to this. And Brown Harris Stevens as a general family really embraced us and really has incorporated us into a lot of the events, and the agents are great. A lot of positive outlooks, regardless of, the ups and downs of our business. And then, my practice has bloomed and blossomed this year, regardless of the ups and downs of the outside world. And of course, my little son turned 2. I'm his favorite person. He's my favorite person. My wife is the best mom. So what else? What else can you ask for?
Well, that's very touching.
Besides more kids.
Well, God bless. Let's hope it happens. I'm grateful for the randomness of life. I look at how I got here. This is a long story. I told you it was related to a government shutdown 30 years ago.
Right.
That brought me into real estate. It's been 30 years in this industry. Like Scott, I'd like to thank all the brokers here at BHS, because if they didn't sell things, I couldn't do this, phony baloney job. And it's been 22 years here, 8 years at Rebney, that, and I fell into it randomly, playing computer games with somebody who went on to work at Rebney and then was leaving and said, "You want my job?" Who knew it was going to lead to this? The randomness of reconnecting with my wife, who I sat behind in a homeroom for 3 years in high school, never spoke to her, crossing paths a couple of years later.
The yearbook
The
pictures being right
randomness
next to each other.
of missing waiting too long for a reservation at a restaurant, going to another restaurant, and developing my gigging career out of this, and meeting the great musicians I've played with over the last years, especially Pat Jordan and Nicky LaPiccolo. How fortunate I've been to have such a wonderful son, and how fortunate I am to still have my mom. So now that I'm getting teary-eyed, I hope everybody could be as lucky as me, and and have something to be really grateful for, because I've been a very lucky person. I've worked a little bit to get this, but you need the opportunity, and that's what to me makes this a great country, because I've seen that opportunity, I've been able to seize it, and that's very special.
Right.
And while my sports teams don't win most of the time, I can live with that because of all the other blessings in my life.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we spend a lot of time at the end of the year looking back at all the good things that have happened to us, but I really wish the momentum would carry into the beginning of the year throughout, the roller coaster of life, because there's so many blessings and wins every part of your day. Every day that you go through, there's something there that you should be appreciative of. And when you do that, it really brings a different perspective onto your life. So
and people really can feel it.
Yeah, it's true.
For something that has such a positive benefit on us, we don't practice gratitude enough. And I'm first one to say I'm guilty about that.
Listen,
It's right. We could sit here, holidays, have a single malt cigar, whatever.
That's right.
Say that we're so lucky. And then come January, we seem to have forgotten all that. And to work with you guys here and Ray and Lena, everything that they do, and everybody here at the More Network, it's great. We have a great time doing it. Trying to advise my son now about his path and what he should do, it's hard because everything was so random. I just tell him you just have to be prepared.
That's right.
And, I hope he has the ride that I've had because, I couldn't wish a better life for somebody.
Well, let's say that work plus opportunity.
You got to be
equals
ready.
luck.
Nobody gives you anything, and hopefully he is a great kid. He really is. He's seen how hard I work, and that's how I did it. I was fortunate to have a dad who did nothing but work and spend time with his kids. Nothing else.
Right.
When you have that example 24/7 for your whole childhood, how could I not turn out okay? And not everybody gets that example. I feel sorry for people that don't, because it was such a blessing. But we're going to try to be more grateful. That's our New Year's resolution, and maybe grow some hair. I don't know.
Bald is in. I'm happy with my hair.
Whatever. I'm married.
Be grateful for it.
I save tens of dollars on shampoo and conditioner every year.
As I tell my wife, I don't see my bald spots, so I see this bald spot, but I don't see the ones in the back. So to me, they're not there because I can't see it. Any closing comments?
No comment
from anybody
on
the panel? Anybody else want to add? No? Okay.
And listen, there's a lot of people behind the scenes that get this done also. It's not just this. So you guys are wonderful too.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ray, Lena, and
appreciate it.
we'll even thank Matt Leone,
For sure.
for everything.
You
he's
put the
done
Three
with us.
Stooges together,
Yeah, well,
right?
yeah,
And kept us together.
well, yeah, you're still, a project we're working
still
on.
working.
We're trying to get you there.
I'm still on probation.
No, thank you for the nice comments you guys said. Like, I
That
know
buys you a couple more months.
I wasn't sure how hosting a podcast was going to be. This was initially just me running my mouth for half an hour, 45 minutes or whatever, but having you guys regularly makes it easy.
Our first Zoom call that we had when I was in Matt's office,
Yeah.
we met within like 5 minutes. We're like, yeah, this is going to work.
And you know what? That's how so many aspects of my life have happened. When I met her completely random, a group of high school reunions happening at the same restaurant that our neighbor's kid wanted to go for his birthday. And then having the mother of this kid be lifelong friends with Nikki, introducing, and then fast forward like 2 years later, they come to one of my gigs, and I say, all right, Nikki, come on, let's do something. And it clicked like that. We did like 4 songs, and it's like we've been working together for years. So when stuff works like that, and talking to you that time, Shar again, we'll see how he's
And now we have over 150,000 people that watch this, so it's great.
We're grateful for the viewership and the listenership, if that's even a word. But we really appreciate the support. If there's things that you're grateful for that you want us to read on air, ctl@bhsusa.com. Whatever holiday you're celebrating, have a great one. We wish everybody and their families well. And the one thing that is forever is love. So let's keep that in mind. And here's to 2026. Let's make it a great year. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll see you next year.